The words living below your means kinda sounds like a drag.
So why do we think you should do it?
In this video, we'll talk about what living below your means means.
And what it does not mean.
And if you're ready to get started, we'll give you some steps that you can take to live below your means, and we'll use an example from our real life to help you out. But if you don't know us, I'm Hope.
And I'm Larry.
And this is Under the Median, where every week we talk about practical frugality. We really like definitions. When we talk about a topic, we like to make sure that we're all approaching it from the same viewpoint. So what does living below your means really mean?
Well, it really means having money left over after you've paid out all of your expenses.
Living below your means is a conscious decision. You choose to spend less than you make.
It makes sure that all of your outgoing expenses are less than your incoming money.
Now, in short, living below your means less stress. It means that you can relax knowing that you have enough income to cover all of your expenses and to have money left over. And we're going to give you some ideas of what you might want to do with that money that's left over. But what does living below your means not mean?
Well, it does not mean that you're going to live like a pauper.
And it does not mean that you are poor. A lot of rich people actually deliberately live beneath their means.
It doesn't mean that you're not going to have any more fun.
And it doesn't mean that you have to stop enjoying life.
So how does living below your means actually work in real life?
To illustrate what living below your means can mean to you, we'll actually share a story from our life. In 2008, on a really nice sunshiny fall day, our children were playing outdoors. It was about 3:30 in the afternoon. They had just walked inside the house, and as soon as their foot hit that vestibule walking into the house, someone ran through our front yard. Now, they were closely followed by police officers. We later found out that they were a drug dealer who was dealing drugs at 3 o'clock in the afternoon at the city park 2 blocks from our house. And that was when we had an epiphany, and Larry said, we need to get out of Dodge. Now, we actually owned our home. We had paid off the mortgage within 5 years of purchasing the home. So we did have some money there. We had some money saved up that we'd already been squirreling away to move to a larger home. And we also had just a little bit of inheritance that we had set aside from Larry's dad. So that's what we had available. But we realized that in order to move and really live within our means easily, we wanted to purchase that next house with cash. So we set a goal for ourselves to save $30,000 within 24 months. Now, bear in mind that his salary at the time without overtime, just basic salary, was about $40,000. So we'll share with you how we saved 37% of his take-home pay and what we did to supplement that over the next 20 months in order to save that $30,000 to pay cash for this house. Now, that is the epitome of living beneath your means. Now, we recognize that what we're about to share with you is actually an extreme. We lived below our means.
Yes.
And we knew that we were doing it in order to reach a great big goal and reach it quickly. But all of the steps that we took, you can actually use in your own life in order to live deliberately beneath your means.
What helped us in this project was that we knew that this was going to be a short-term measure. It wasn't going to be permanent. Our extreme measures were only going to last maybe 2 to 3 years. So we were okay with living like this in order to meet a really huge, big goal.
Now, the other thing you need to understand is that we were already living below our means. We were already saving money every single month. So some of the things we'll share we were doing, it's just that we sort of hypercharged them, turbocharged them, if you will, and gave them a little push in the direction that we knew that we needed to do. And if you're questioning whether we still live below our means, we absolutely do.
Well, let's take a look at some of the steps we actually took in order to meet this really huge goal. In fact, I actually thought it maybe was a little bit of an impossible goal to pay cash for our next house. But the first thing we had to do in order to really live below our means was to establish a why. Why were we doing this?
Now, this is just kind of a sneaky way, guys, of us sharing with you that you need to know your goals. Really, that's a nice way of saying your why. Here's why you have to have a why. Because for us, it was an obvious why. We felt like the neighborhood was definitely degenerating. It was going downhill. It was in a position where we didn't know how much longer our children were still going to be safe living there. We had a huge why. But in order for you yourself to live beneath your means, you need to understand why it is you're doing it. Because anytime you just arbitrarily start starving yourself, for instance, when you're on a diet, if you're just starving yourself and there's no end in sight, well, then you're not going to keep doing it. And the same way with saving money. If you're going to live beneath your means, you need to have some goals, concrete goals that you are working toward.
Goals give us motivation in order to do it and keep up with it.
Because we're not going to lie to you. This whole business of living beneath your means, living under your means, living on less than you make, however you want to put it, it's not always going to be easy.
No.
There are going to be days when you just want to throw up your hands and say, forget about it.
Forget about it.
I'm not going to keep living this way anymore. And when you are able to have a concrete written list of goals, you can get those out and look at them and remind yourself, this is why I am doing what I am doing. Tell us what your goals are. Is it to pay off credit card debt? Is it to pay off your mortgage? Is it to save for retirement? Those are your whys. Tell us about your whys in the comments section.
You have to have goals in order to keep you on track. You know, a train stays on a track because the wheels are designed to stay on that track, without which it won't do so. So a goal will help you do that. And it's always good sometimes to have someone along the line with some experience to help you out.
Now, there's actually someone who has helped to keep us on track for a number of years. John Creekmer and the team at Creekmer Wealth Advisors. They are our partners for this video. I actually just got an email from John today. We got an email. He sends it out every 2 weeks, and he does something called a deep dive. It's a 20 or 25-minute video. Now, today's video actually had 4 really cool charts that were available for me to look at, which made me super duper happy. But the neat thing about these videos is the fact that he takes that time and sort of answers in depth some questions that he may have received about budgeting or about saving money or about investing or about retirement. And what that allows us to do is to feel like we're really up to date with what's going on. And also it lets us know maybe there are some questions that it raises that we want to make sure that we contact John and ask for further clarification. John and the staff at Creekmer Wealth Advisors have always been super duper available to answer any questions that we've had. Now, if you'd like to get on that newsletter list, it's a bi-weekly newsletter. There's a link all the way at the top of the description of this video. You can also use that same link if you already know you have some questions for John and you'd like him to give you some help. Now, you do need to live in the 50 United States for John to help you, but he's super happy to field any questions that you might have. Thanks, John and Creekmer Wealth Advisors, for sponsoring the video.
Well, Hope just got done using a word that relates to our next step in how we live below our means, and that word is budget.
One of the first things we did after we figured out our why was to take a really critical look at our written budget. Now, you notice I said written budget because if the budget's up here and it's not down on here, then it's not actually a budget, folks. You need to have your budget written down. And because you need to put that in front of your face on a weekly basis so that you can see how you're progressing on the budget and whether you're staying on budget or not. But the first thing we looked at is what Larry and I like to call our BBB. That is our bare bones budget. Now, your bare bones budget is what you need to have in order to sustain yourself. So you need clothing on your back, you need food in your stomach, you need a roof over your head, and you need transportation to get from point A to point B. That is your bare bones budget. That's the first thing we looked at. Now, not to say that we didn't look critically at that and decide whether we could lower those amounts or not. But the first thing you want to do when it comes to living under your means is to make sure that your basic needs are being met.
Now, if you don't have a budget, Hope and I recently did a video on a 4-step process to laying out a budget. And this process should only take you about 30 minutes. We'll leave a link up here in this video and down into the description so you can watch that. The next step that we took in trying to live below our means, and remember, we're really kind of talking about an extreme measure. You can apply these to just living below your means as well. The next step was we decided to plug the holes. Now, what do we mean by plugging the holes? That sounds like we're on a sinking ship or something.
I hope not. What that really means is, anytime you have a budget, there are places that you are overspending money or unnecessarily spending money. Even if you believe in your heart that you have done everything you possibly can in order to spend the minimum amount of money that you need to spend every month. All of us, Larry and I included, have gone through periods of time when we have looked critically at our budget and said, you know what? We're spending that money and we really don't need to be spending it. So we looked at every single facet of our budget and decided where are there some holes that we can immediately plug, things that we can stop doing that we knew would immediately save us money. Because I am a girl who likes to see instant satisfaction. I like instant gratification. And if we were going to embark on this big goal, I wanted to make sure that I could see progress like right away.
So what you want to do here is look at areas that you're spending money on in your budget that you don't really have to spend money on. Maybe that might be going out to eat. Or maybe that's alcohol and cigarettes. Think about things that you absolutely don't have to have in order to live. These are things that you can take out of your budget, put that money back in order to have a surplus.
So basically, you're going to pull the plug on those items so that you can use those items in order to plug the holes that are in your budget.
Oh, I like that.
Thank you. Now, there's one other thing that you really should be avoiding, and it should go without saying that you want to avoid impulse spending. So while you're fixing those immediate holes in your budget, you might want to think about looking at some of the emails that are coming into your email inbox. Yeah, I'm talking about Wayfair. Yeah, I'm talking about the book club that you belong to. I'm talking about those things that come into your inbox and say, spend money, spend money, spend money, because you might want to just unsubscribe to those. Now, don't worry. If you decide to resubscribe later, they're going to welcome you back with open arms when you feel like you're going to be able to get those emails and not be tempted to hit that big red buy button. But right now, you are focusing on making sure deliberately that more money is coming in than is going out.
You know, Amazon sends me emails every week that suggest things that they think I should buy from Amazon. I literally just delete them. The next thing that we did is kind of one of Hope's very favorite things. In fact, she came up with this idea.
We call it the 10% challenge. This, if you've ever watched us and heard us talk about the 10% challenge, this moment in our life was the birthplace of the 10% challenge. Larry said, get the budget. After we had plugged immediate holes that we knew that we could stop spending money on, he said, get the budget. And I said, there is not a whole lot that we can cut. And he looked at me and he said, I don't care if we pay for this new house with nickels and dimes. We will pay for this new house. Get the budget. So we instituted what became known as the 10% challenge. To do the 10% challenge, you get your budget just like we did. You lay it out in front of you and you challenge yourself in 20 minutes, set the timer, and you and your partner go through each of those budget areas and you come up with ideas for how you will cut each of those budget categories by 10%. You will be absolutely astounded at how much money you can save. We had a viewer that did that. They saved over $1,000 in 1 year just by going through 20 minutes doing the 10% challenge.
And if I recall, we saved several $100s a month by doing that. So, and we did meet our goal within 2 years. We were able to pay cash for our next home.
And remember, this is a budget, guys, and this is why we tell you this. This is a budget that I was absolutely, positively convinced that we would not be able to find any more than $50 that we could save. And by the time we'd done this challenge, we went through and said, nope, there was more money there to save than we thought there was.
Basically, Hope said, I'll never forget this, if we can't eat it, we're not buying it. That was pretty much what it was.
Now, if you want to get a look at some of the things we did to cut our expenses, we wrote an ebook on it. It's called 10 Ways to Radically Reduce Your Expenses. It's free.
There'll be a link in the video description to request this ebook.
Fifth thing that we did in order to live under our means, and that was that we tracked our spending.
You have to know where your money's going, and the only way you're going to know where it's going is if you track it. One thing, it's kind of an easy way to track it, is any receipt that you get from the time that you're going to start tracking, get a little cardboard box, and as you bring home receipts, just start putting it in the box. And after a month, go through and look over those receipts and do a thorough investigation of where your money's going. Once you figure out where your money's going, then it's really easy to make some decisions on whether it should have gone there or not.
We knew exactly what that concrete goal was. We knew what the target was to how much money we needed to save every single month. At the end of every month, we could tell you pretty close to the penny exactly how much money we saved and how much further we needed to go in order to meet the goal. Keeping your goals in front of you, guys, I'll say it like a million times. If you will write those goals down, put them in front of your face, and track your progress on those goals, you have a much greater percentage chance of reaching those goals than if you don't take those simple steps.
Let's go to the next step that we put in place in order to live below your means, and that is if you make more money, that means if you get a raise, you get a bonus, then put that towards savings. Don't just absorb that into your budget or say, well, now we can spend some money on some fun stuff. We can buy that pool table.
That's called lifestyle creep, guys. What happens is we get a raise or we get a second job or we get a bonus. Anyway, money is coming in that we weren't expecting. And our expenses tend to grow in direct correlation to that extra money. So you find yourself 2, 3, 4 years down the road making more money, but not saving more money. But if you'll stay on that same budget that you're on and make sure that all that extra money is being put toward future goals, then you're going to be consistently living below your means.
Now, this kind of goes along with that thought. When you're talking about savings, you need to be deliberate about it, and you need to put savings as a part of your plan off of the top, not just to look at what's kind of left over and then put that in savings. You need to make a deliberate measure to put money towards savings.
Here's another tip for you. Automate. Some banks and credit unions will allow you to automatically deposit money. And not only that, they will take that automatic deposit and they will divide it automatically into different accounts for you. So you can have multiple accounts under your name at the same bank or credit union. Now, not all banks or credit unions do this, so you need to check with your bank or credit union. But if your bank or credit union does not do that, you'll need to be responsible for doing it on paper and making certain that you know how much money is set aside for each future goal, because otherwise it will be, as we've said in the past, one great big green pile of cash and you'll wind up spending it thinking that it's free money to spend, and it's actually not.
Now, let's say you've looked over your budget and you've looked over your income and you don't have enough income to meet your basic needs. This is a time when you need to think about making more money. That might involve doing side gigs. It might involve selling things that you have in your house. We have a lot of avenues online where we can list things and sell them. It might mean you might need to start looking for another job if it's kind of a major increase that you're needing.
Larry also sold items from our house that he did not anymore need, or that we didn't need any longer. I should say, not he. We did not need any longer. We sold those items. Larry also took every bit of overtime that was offered to him. Now, the difference that it made between us meeting our goal and not meeting our goal was that of several $1,000s in 1 year. So it was actually quite a bit of extra income we were able to bring in just by focusing on what can I do that's going to bring in more money.
Hope did some side jobs. She did some voicing for a local radio station, and a business that I used to work at hired her to do some voicing. And I did some odd jobs, some transferring of old cassette tapes and 8mm films for people. There's all kinds of things that you can do. Use your imagination and get those wheels turning. Another thing that sometimes we don't think about is paying cash for items that we buy. You know, when you pay cash, you actually feel that money going away. There's a real sense of loss of that money when you're giving it out. And it kind of keeps us from spending too much. When you pay with cash, you can only pay with as much money as you have on hand. Then again, there's another way you can do this with the envelope system, where you actually put it in envelopes, and when the envelope's empty, you stop spending. It's an easy way to track and regulate what you're spending.
Now, we would be the first to admit that this is getting harder and harder to do. Not because cash is hard to come by, but it's hard to find places to spend it any longer, because a lot of places are going cashless and they're saying you have to be using debit cards or credit cards in order to shop here, which is very sad, but there are still plenty of places available that will take your cold, hard cash. And if you absolutely can't find a way to do it, then you need to do what we've suggested earlier, and that is you have to track it on paper. No matter how you do it, if you don't have that cash in hand, you have to act as though you do have that cash in hand. And at the end of every day, you have to make an accounting. You start with a certain amount at the top of that ledger sheet in that column. Let's say that it's groceries. And as you spend, if you have no option but to scan your debit card or your credit card, then you are going to make certain that you are subtracting it by hand every single night at the end of the night. And when you get down to zero, you're done shopping.
Before we go out grocery shopping, especially during this critical time in our lives, I would ask Hope, how much do we have left this month in our grocery budget? She would give me that amount, and then we would fix that in our mind. Let's say we had $50 left. When we went to the store, we would go around and we would look for the items that we had on a list. And as we put those items in the cart, we would subtract it from 50. So we knew exactly how much we had left. It was a great way to track our money.
Now, to just give you an example of how this even works today in our lives, I don't think we've even mentioned it on the channel. We will go in probably April back to the Amish store and buy some bulk food. We haven't been since, I think, November.
Actually, August.
So it's been quite some time since we've been there.
Yeah.
And I told Larry, I said, what I want to do is to save up some money in order to do that without busting the grocery budget to pieces. So for January, February, March, and April, we are spending no more than $100 a month on groceries to feed our family. We do have a lot of stuff back in the pantry, and we've got a full freezer. So that is where I'm consistently needing to pull food from right now in order to not go over that $100. But what he just mentioned about tracking every single grocery expense, so I know how much I have left before I head out to the grocery store, that's what I've been doing for the past 2 months.
Another tip that we'd like to give you is to reduce your regular spending.
Now, what I just shared with you is kind of an example of that. We are artificially reducing our regular spending for a period of time in order to reach a goal to be able to buy some bulk food without blowing out the grocery budget. But you can use that same idea of reducing regular spending in nearly any category of your budget. Find a way to get what you need for what you're willing to pay. Call your internet company and ask if they have a package that costs less than what you are currently paying for. Switch to Mint Mobile. We've had Mint Mobile for several months now.
Great service.
And we love Mint Mobile. $15 a month, guys.
Really
there are
worth it.
a lot of ways that you can actually reduce your monthly bills, and you just don't think about it. In fact, we did a whole video and we gave you step-by-step procedures on what to do and how to reduce your monthly bills. We'll make sure that that video is listed in the description of this video.
But let's touch on just a few more. Wait for items to go on sale. This takes a little discipline. It means that you're going to have to delay your gratification on getting that item in order to wait for that. You also might look at items that are on clearance, but you want to be careful with that. Make sure it's an item that's on your list and something you're already planning on buying. And the other thing, as we mentioned, we're going to Amish country in order to buy in bulk. We save a lot of money by buying 50-pound bags of oatmeal, rolled oats, and cream of wheat in 50-pound bags. I mean, it's amazing what we end up paying per pound for these items by doing this.
But we will caution you, buying in bulk is not always the best deal. So before you do it, make sure you do the math. A few other ways that you can reduce those regular expenses. One of them is to barter.
Yeah.
Things that you've previously been paying for, see if you can't barter to get them.
You'll also want to focus on free forms of recreation and fun. There's so many things that we can do that just don't cost a lot of money. Look for those things and save that money.
In short, there is no magic formula to live beneath your means. It takes determination, and it takes you deciding, I'm going to do it.
It doesn't happen automatically. It's hard work, and you have to work at it very deliberately. But let me tell you, the payoff is wonderful.
Now, remember once again, if you want to know in depth the things that we cut in order to reach great big goals on a low income, then be sure to request that free ebook. There'll be a link to it in the description of this video.
If living below your means makes sense to you and you want to do that, but you haven't set up your budget yet, we have a video that we mentioned earlier that we did, the 4-step process to setting up a budget. It doesn't take that long. It's just a matter of drilling down and doing it. We'll leave a link to that video right over there. Or being poor.
That was my line.
Well, you took my line, so I took your line.
Well,
What's fair is fair.
I'm sorry.
You steal from me, I steal from you. I mean,
What the heck kind of logic is that?
karma.
There's no moral.